Would you be the jerk for telling your own partner to stop mocking your accent? We'll get into that in a bit, but first, am I the jerk for refusing to share my special recipe with my cousin who wants to use it for her business? So here's the deal. I, 18-year-old female, have this amazing dessert recipe that I came up with after months of experimenting in the kitchen. It's a unique twist on a classic treat, and everyone who tries it says it's incredible. My family always asks me to make it for gatherings, and honestly, I take a lot of pride in how much people love it. Recently, my cousin Jess, 24-year-old female, started a small baking business from home. She's been doing pretty well, and I'm happy for her. Last week at a family dinner, Jess pulled me aside and asked if I'd give her my dessert recipe so she could add it to her menu. I was flattered at first, but then I told her I wasn't comfortable sharing it because it's really personal to me. It's my thing, you know? She said I was being selfish and that it's not like I'm starting a business or anything, so why would I hoard the recipe? She even got my aunt, her mom, involved, who later called me and said I should support family and not be so stingy. I explained that I wasn't trying to be mean, but I worked really hard to create that recipe, and it's something I'm proud of. Now, half of my family is calling me petty, and the other half is staying out of it. Jess posted a vague rant on Facebook about people gatekeeping creativity and how it's impossible to get ahead with unsupportive people. My mom says I should just give her the recipe to keep the peace, but I don't think I'm in the wrong here. So, am I the jerk? To be fair, in my life, a lot of times when I see disputes come out about somebody's recipe, I've always kind of found it kind of funny that people are so guarded or so protective. But at the same time, I put myself in OP's shoes and I'm like, I kind of want it to be mine, you know, it's kind of their creation. It's like saying that you made this really amazing vocal track or you wrote some really awesome lyrics and then somebody comes along and is like, well, I'm starting up a music production business, can I use that? And getting upset that you don't just hand it over. Sam Bam, thank you Sam too, commented, not the jerk. If this were tech or music or a different industry, no one would expect you to give up your successful creation for someone else's profit. You developed this has gotten you success and praise and a sense of accomplishment within the family. If she takes this and makes it part of her business, will she start showing up with the treats and taking credit? It just sounds like she's fine with screwing you over to get her small business off the ground. Bated Breaths commented, yes, the recipe is OP's intellectual property. And gatekeeping creativity? OP's not attempting to prevent her cousin from being creative. She can be as inventive and creative as she likes. She just can't purloin OP's creation and present it as her own. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you guys enjoy getting to decide whether or not all of these people are jerks, want to hit those like and subscribe buttons down below. That said, our next story is, am I the jerk for refusing to babysit after my sister demanded I stop bringing my boyfriend to family events? I, 20-year-old male, have been bringing my boyfriend Ryan, 22-year-old male, for about a year. My sister Amanda, 28-year-old female, has a 4-year-old Jack. After a family barbecue last month, Amanda pulled me aside and said, hey, just so you know, it might be better if you don't bring Ryan to the next few family gatherings. I asked her why, and she got all awkward saying, Jack's been asking questions about you and Ryan, and I don't think he's old enough to understand all that yet. I told her we weren't exactly putting on a pride parade in her yard, we were literally just eating hot dogs and chatting with family. She replied, it's just confusing for him, you know how kids are. I was mad, but I kept it together and said, if Ryan isn't welcome, maybe I just won't come either. She sighed and said I was being dramatic. Last week, Amanda called me panicked because her babysitter canceled. I told her I couldn't because Ryan and I already had plans. She begged, saying she was desperate, and I finally snapped. Why do you want me babysitting Jack? What if I accidentally expose him to my terrifying gay lifestyle? God forbid he sees me and Ryan together. Amanda blew up. She accused me of using Jack to make a point and said, this isn't about Ryan, it's about you being spiteful. You're punishing Jack because you're mad at me. She told my parents, and that's when the real drama started. My mom called and said I was being selfish for letting a small disagreement ruin my relationship with Amanda. I told her it wasn't small and reminded her of Amanda's comment about confusing Jack. Mom brushed it off saying, she's just doing what's best for her child. I said, what about what's best for me? Why do I have to hide a part of my life to make her comfortable? My dad sided with me. He said Amanda was being narrow-minded and told her, kids aren't confused by love, they're confused by people acting like it's something to hide. Amanda then put the drama into the fam group chat. My uncle said, it's not homophobic to want to protect your kids from topics they're not ready for. Why push it? This set off my cousin and she said, if Jack's old enough to understand that Amanda and Mike are married, then he's old enough to understand Uncle, me, has a boyfriend. She accused Amanda of being a hypocrite and also called out my uncle too, saying, let's not make this about your own outdated beliefs. She also called Amanda a stuck-up bench and my uncle called my cousin a drama queen. My aunt chimed in on the family chat saying, I don't agree with OP's lifestyle, but we should still support each other. My grandmother replied, support doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. Amanda's husband Mike texted me saying, look, I don't have an issue with you or Ryan, but this is getting out of hand. Amanda's just trying to avoid awkward questions from Jack, not insult you. I told him it's already insulting. Would she say the same thing if I were dating a woman? He left me on scene. Am I the jerk? So, depending on your own beliefs, I think you're going to have a pretty staunch reaction here. To me, I think it's completely fair to point out the hypocrisy of being upset about OP bringing their partner around when it would be completely fine if OP were instead dating a woman. Like OP kind of alluded to, it's not like they're out here doing something that would be inappropriate for any couple to do, like way too much PDA than would ever be appropriate. One comment read, not the jerk. If Jack is old enough to understand a man and woman being together, he's old enough to understand a man and man being together. I am also gay, and I would have said the same thing to my sister. It's disappointing that this has divided your family. It really brings out their true colors. I think you should go little to no contact with your sister. OP responded saying, I haven't spoken to my sister in days now. I'm definitely considering going no contact with her. Some of these comments are saying that she's using Jack as a way to hide her homophobia, and honestly, now that I think about it, she might be. What's confusing to me is my whole family were supportive of me when I came out, and they were all so nice and respectful to Ryan when I introduced him to the family. I just don't know why everyone has switched up all of a sudden. Our next story is, am I the jerk for telling my cousin that it's not my fault she bought her degree? I'm 18 years old, non-binary, closeted, and I live with my parents, my father who's 68 and my mother who's 60. We're closer to my father's family because they live closer to us than my mother's relatives. My father has a brother, 72-year-old male, married to my aunt, 70-year-old female. They have a daughter, my cousin, 40. I can't stand my cousin because she thinks she's better than everyone else and has a degree in psychology. One day, we were at an aunt's house for my niece's birthday, 6-year-old female, my stepbrother's daughter, 48-year-old male. At some point, my cousin and I started talking and she said that she can't stand that all these people are diagnosed with dyslexia, because in her opinion, it's just an excuse for stupid people who don't try hard enough, and that she knows this because she has a degree in psychology. I looked at her and told her I'm severely dyslexic, dysgraphic, and dyscalculic, and that I have a really hard time reading and writing. She laughed and told me I was just stupid. I decided to ignore her comments and went to entertain my niece. When it was time for presents, my cousin gave my niece a look and told her to ask me to read it out loud. Of course, my niece did. I panicked because I have a hard time reading, let alone reading out loud. Luckily, my mother noticed and told my niece that she would read it to her because she loves to read. After my niece moved in with my mother, I confronted my cousin and asked, "What's your problem?" She told me that I just needed to practice and stop pretending. At that point, I got angry and told her that it wasn't my fault that she had bought her degree in and therefore didn't really know what dyslexia was. After this exchange, both she and I went out as to not ruin the party, but she started insulting me for all my choices, from my appearance to my tattoos, and even said I wasn't feminine enough. I remained calm, since I'm used to her insults by now, and went back inside to play Lego with my niece. However, today I received a text from my aunt accusing me of being a bench for insinuating that my cousin's degree was fake. Even though my parents told me I did the right thing, now I'm not sure if I did right. So, am I the jerk? OP's definitely not the jerk in my eyes. I've had a really good friend who's done psychology-related stuff post-secondary, and just through the mere contact, I haven't even really looked into too much of that stuff. But just from being around them, I can tell how inappropriate and how incorrect this person is, and actually just how much of nothing this cousin knows of psychology just by their comments. I don't actually know this person's circumstances, but if you told me, oh, this person paid their way through their psychology degree and they backed it up with that kind of talk, I'd be willing to believe you. Hypnosite commented, "Not the jerk. As the holder of a psychology degree, I can confirm that we were taught in detail about various learning disabilities and neurological differences such as dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, etc. I wonder if she's ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is also a noted psychological theory that states that people who know a small amount about a topic tend to grossly overestimate their actual knowledge, which actual experts believe they always have more to learn." This next story is, am I the jerk for telling my best friend I don't want to be in her wedding because I can't afford it? My best friend of many years is getting married, and she recently asked me to be a bridesmaid. I was thrilled at first, but after she shared the details, my excitement turned into anxiety. The dresses she picked out are expensive, the bachelorette party is a destination weekend, and there are other costs like hair, makeup, and gifts. I did the math and it's way out of my budget. I told her that while I'm honored she asked, I can't afford to be in the wedding. I offered to support her in other ways like helping with planning or attending her bridal shower, but she was upset. She said she thought being her bridesmaid was non-negotiable because we're so close, and she didn't think it was fair for me to back out over money. She also implied that I could make it work if I really tried and suggested I use my savings or pick up extra work to cover the costs. Now I feel like I've let her down and maybe overreacted by saying no so quickly. I know how important this day is to her, but I also just can't justify putting myself into debt or draining my savings for it. She's been distant since our conversation, and I'm worried I've damaged our friendship. Am I the jerk? I'm just gonna be honest, if this kind of situation is one that is going to impact or damage the relationship, especially on a long-term scenario, were you ever really that great of friends? I just can't imagine staying friends with somebody that says, "No, you have to be at my wedding, it's non-negotiable, empty your life savings to accomplish this." Nobody I would call a friend of mine would ever be asking me that. Collie the Blaze commented, "Not the jerk. You shouldn't go into debt for your own wedding, much less someone else's. Your friend is demanding that you be financially irresponsible, and that's not fair. When I got married, I knew that my best friend wouldn't be able to afford to come, so I'd included the costs of flying her out and putting her up in a hotel in our wedding planning. It turned out that her health was too poor to come, massive infection that required major surgery with a very long recovery, so I didn't actually end up doing so, but that's how I intended to deal with her not being able to afford to come." This next story is, am I the jerk for beating my girlfriend's brother at a game when I would normally let him win to prove a point? When I would visit my girlfriend's house, I would sometimes play games with her little brother who's 12. When I would play competitive games against him, I would normally let him win. Call of Duty, etc. I was visiting him again a few days ago, and her little brother had two of his friends over, and I overheard him talking about me. He was telling them how bad I was at games, and it must make me mentally disabled to be so bad. He used more offensive language. He said my girlfriend must be stupid for dating me too. I could hear his friends laughing about it. It was quite hurtful as I had tried to be friendly with him. A bit later I said to him, "Wanna play some games, buddy?" And he acted polite, but I could see his friends laughing to themselves. I played Call of Duty against him and did not go easy. His friends were now laughing at him and he was on the verge of tears before he stormed off to his room. My girlfriend wasn't happy. Later in the car, she accused me of deliberately making her brother cry. I told her I wasn't trying to do that, I just didn't like how he was talking about me or her. Am I the jerk? She said he's just a kid and I should have just left it. Hope he's not the jerk here. I'm hoping that this isn't going to be something that impacts the relationship between them, and more so, maybe serves as a character-defining moment for this kid. You know, a little bit of humble pie. Philosophical War Pig commented, "Not the jerk. Your girlfriend's brother trash-talking you behind your back wasn't cool. Calling you mentally disabled wasn't cool. I know he's just a kid, but he's a jerk. He needed to be humbled. Good job, OP. Keep smashing the little crap." Our next story is, am I the jerk for laughing at my friend's sunburn? I'm from Brisbane, and my friend from the USA came down and visited a few days ago. The first day, we went to the beach in the evening, and I pointed out that if we were going in the day, he needed to put on sunscreen. He didn't believe me and said something along the lines of, "Back where I'm from, nobody really wears sunscreen. It's just the sun, it can't really hurt you." I pointed out his skin is very, very pale and it will be burnt to a crisp if he doesn't put on sunscreen. And he said, "Yeah, but I overheard someone say it's only going to be 30 degrees tomorrow. That's like really cold. If it's that cold, surely I don't need sunscreen." I tried to explain to him the difference between Celsius and Fahrenheit, as well as explaining that the temperature isn't what gives you a sunburn. But I ended up realizing he was probably really jet lagged and sleep deprived, so his brain probably wasn't working as well as it normally does. He had just been on a flight. The next day, we went to the beach again, and while we were walking there, I asked if he put on sunscreen. He said no, and that he was a real tough man and could handle the sun, and even made a remark insinuating that Australians are weak for putting on sunscreen. I offered him some of my sunscreen, and he declined. Despite this, we had a good time at the beach. However, the next day we had planned to go to the movies, and I noticed that he was burnt all over his body. Like he was bright red and obviously in pain from having his skin cooked by the sun. I couldn't stop myself from laughing, and I said, "Bro, you should have just put on some sunscreen. Then you wouldn't look like a big beetroot." And he did not like being compared to a root vegetable while he was in pain from his full body sunburn, and he chose to cancel the movies trip until I became less annoying. I went back home and couldn't resist the urge to comment on social media on one of his pictures from the beach trip the day before, and I commented, "Did you get a nice tan?" Hope he's not the jerk here. Hopefully this is a good learning moment for them to use sunscreen going forward. It's actually kind of crazy to me, jet lagged or not, that they would say, "Oh, it's cold out, I don't need to wear sunscreen," as if temperature has ever made a difference. It's always laughable to me when the assertion is kind of like, who cares about a sunburn, or kind of in a greater scope, who cares about the risk of melanoma, I'm a tough man. Kevin7650 commented, "Not the jerk, your friend is an idiot and got rightfully mocked for being one. First, he seemingly doesn't know what Celsius is, and then he tries to act all macho by saying he doesn't need sunscreen, then gets all upset when he ends up getting sunburnt, and you make a relatively tame joke at his expense? And his ego was so fragile that he canceled spending time with you, a friend he flew across the ocean to see that he only has limited time with? He got what he deserved, maybe he'll finally learn his lesson." Our next story is, am I the jerk for leaving a barbecue after 6+ hours of socializing and providing the food? I, 33-year-old male, went to a friend's barbecue with my wife. It was there, A is 33-year-old female, B is 31-year-old male house, and was just the four of us hanging out. Wife and I brought steaks and veggies to grill for all of us, and got there at about 11:30 a.m. as requested. Since they wanted us there early-ish, we're assuming we're cooking lunch, so we only had a light breakfast. My friend A tells us that they want to drink beers that day, and therefore can only have one meal so they don't exceed their calories. She's 5'2", 105 pounds, he's 5'10", 150 pounds. Okay, whatever, we'll eat at 4:30 like they want. They don't put out any snacks because they don't want to tempt themselves and think we should all feel the same even after we asked for anything to munch on. They shoot down my wife wanting to get gas station snacks by passive-aggressively mentioning they thought she wanted to lose weight. I start seeing red, but my wife shoots me the "just behave for a little while longer" look. Well, 4 p.m. rolls up and I ask if they want me to prep everything because we're pretty hungry and want to start cooking, so it's ready by 4:30 p.m. A and B have an attitude about this and tell us they aren't starting to cook until 4:30 p.m. Okay, whatever, I prep the steaks for us and season the veggies, get the charcoal stacked and ready. 4:30 hits and I'm like, "Hey sweet, let's cook that meal." Since B made a huge deal about wanting to grill it himself, B stays seated, ignores me and starts trying and failing to make a fishing pole from scratch instead, with a broken limb from the yard. Okay, whatever, 10 minutes later I get the grill going and just cook it all for us myself, since they keep ignoring that we say we're really hungry by now. Food isn't ready until 5:30ish. We eat, they push their food around and then put it directly into leftover containers and say they'll eat it tomorrow since they're still drinking. 6 p.m. hits and we start gathering our stuff to leave so we can get home and feed and walk our dog. Here's my "am I the jerk?" They both get mad and say that we've been rude and how are we going to just come over, eat their food, the food that we brought with us and provided for everyone, and then leave right after. Apparently me taking over the grill set off one of B's bipolar episodes, and A, who's also bipolar, thinks I need to apologize before we're invited back again. My wife says absolutely not and doesn't want to go back anyway. I'm honestly just considering ghosting the whole friendship since it seems like their binge drinking and eating disorders makes them both have some bizarro recollection of events. Am I the jerk here for wanting to end a 10-year friendship over this? I don't think OP's the jerk here. I think anybody in a situation like this is going to be heavily frustrated. I would say, considering it is a 10-year friendship, I would think about the whole scope of things and how things have been, not just necessarily towards the beginning, but also in recent years. Has this been a kind of consistent thing? And I feel like if I were in OP's shoes, what I would do is just explain what happened, how I felt, and if they're not willing to recognize that or apologize in any way, maybe it's for the best they just stop hanging out. Poe Adam commented, "Not the jerk. Let's count the number of ways they were rude. Inviting you to come to their place for a barbecue but providing none of the food themselves, telling you to come at 11:30 with no intention of eating until 5:30, not providing any snacks, being passive-aggressive about you wanting to go get snacks, ignoring you when you tell them the grill is ready, not eating the food you bought and cooked for them, calling you rude for eating their food, which was actually your food, calling you rude for leaving after having already been there 6 hours, calling you rude for taking over the grill when they ignored you when you told them the grill was ready." I would try to talk to them when they're sober to see if they realize how ridiculous they were being, and if they double down on you owing them an apology, then maybe it is time to end the friendship. P.S. I hope they at least shared their beer with you. Our next story is, am I the jerk for expecting an apology when my in-laws are chronically late? I've been married to my husband for 15 years. In that time, I've taken over preparing holidays for his family and our small family. His parents have always shown up late to every holiday. Not 10 or even 20 minutes late, but an hour to 2 hours late. My husband and I have discussed that I feel it's rude and inconsiderate, but he refuses to speak to them about it, instead telling me I should just get over it. We had decided together that they would not bring any significant part of the meal as they were always late. This year was no different, and my husband forgot that we had made that deal, so his mother was bringing mashed potatoes. He refused and acted insulted when I tried to purchase potatoes. In typical fashion, his parents showed up 1 hour late, which meant that we had to wait for them to eat, and the food I'd spent all day preparing sat for an hour. They offered no apology and just became demanding at once, wanting things cut and requiring I fetch things for them. During the meal, they thanked my husband for preparing everything, which he explained that I did it all. They then said, well, it's a joint effort. Am I the jerk for thinking his family owes me an apology? OP's not the jerk here, and honestly, I would have thought by now they would have figured out to invite them, but tell them that the start time is an hour or maybe even 2 hours earlier. What's the problem in lying if that actually ends up making them show up on time? Brooke74740 commented, "Do not expect an apology. I serve the food at a time I specify, and latecomers can reheat theirs when they arrive. That said, since you have held the meal all of this time, it is fair to give them a heads up that you have a new policy. Maybe this means that you can eat alone for the first year. Everyone comes to my home on time." Bated Breaths commented, "I'd have just served mother-in-law's mashed potatoes for dessert, and the next year I'd ask them to bring dessert. They'll arrive 2 hours late and the food will have been eaten, the leftovers packed away and the dishes washed, and it's time for dessert." Our next story is, am I the jerk for asking my girlfriend to stop mocking my accent? I, 28-year-old female, an English native speaker, moved abroad a while ago to do my PhD in a country where I'm fluent in the main language. C2 level, wrote my PhD thesis in it. My level is very good, but I still have a slight accent. After finishing my studies last year, I got a job and decided that I would like to stay and build a life here. I've been dating my girlfriend, 27-year-old female, we are lesbians, please note our genders, for about a year, and it's going well. The only issue is that she won't stop mocking my accent. It's not constant, and the only thing she does is occasionally repeat what I've said in an exaggerated, extra accenty way and then laugh, but it really gets on my nerves. I've asked her multiple times over the time we've been together to stop, but she only laughs harder and says that it's funny when I get mad. Admittedly, I'm tiny and have a baby face, but still, this happens very rarely, and our relationship is otherwise very healthy and respectful. This past weekend, she did it again, but this time at a small dinner that I was hosting at my place for some friends and coworkers who I'm friendly with. Only a couple people who were helping me bring the food out from the kitchen heard, but it was still really embarrassing and hurtful to have this happen in front of friends and colleagues like that. At the time, I only asked her to please not do that, which she waved off, saying it was a joke. My coworker said it wasn't funny, but my girlfriend insisted she was just kidding, and our mutual friend, who is usually pretty level-headed, defended her. We went on with the dinner, but it really left a sour taste in my mouth. After, I tried to talk to her about it again, saying that it hurts my feelings when she does this and that doing it in public like that was crossing a line. I even asked how she would feel if I did that when she tried to speak in English. She just started learning a few months ago and I would never mock her like that. She just said that she wouldn't care if I did that and that she would find it funny if I did. I saw that we weren't getting anywhere, and so I asked her for some space to cool down. But she says I'm being childish. I wouldn't be second-guessing myself if it weren't for our mutual friend agreeing with her, and the fact that she's so respectful in every other way, and this really only happens occasionally. So am I the jerk for wanting her to stop? Or should I lighten up a bit because I'm taking it more seriously than I should? While maybe it might be more beneficial if OP could take this as like some weird sign of affection or something, considering they're really good everywhere else, the bottom line is OP doesn't like it, and it hurts OP, and OP doesn't want to hear it, so they're clearly not the jerk. Floor the Least commented, "You ask her to stop mocking you privately, so she escalates to mocking you publicly? It doesn't matter whether she thinks it's funny or not. You've asked her to stop and she's choosing to escalate instead. And when you ask for space, she belittles you by calling you childish. She clearly has no intention of stopping. This is not how someone behaves when they actually respect you. I would suggest you examine whether or not she's actually so respectful otherwise, or if you just have the habit of swallowing your issues when she makes you feel bad. Not the jerk." Our next story is, am I the jerk for not letting my stepsister borrow my wedding dress? Me, female 23, got married to my husband about a year ago. It was wonderful and probably the happiest day of my life. My family was involved with everything and I was delighted by it, including my stepfather, who at first I had a somewhat rocky relationship with, but I grew to appreciate him. His daughter, 26-year-old female, is an entire different story. We can't get along. I've tried, and I'm sure she also has, but it's not about being different. It's because she's always had very similar tastes as me. We used to fight about our clothes, our toys, and so on. She has a relationship with a man whom I've got to know maybe 3 or 4 times. She announced her relationship with him during my wedding, which annoyed me at first, but I let it go since it was only a 20-second PSA and became engaged just 4 months after that. Now, she's been planning her wedding and I've tried to help as much as I can, since I already had most contacts fresh. She plans to marry a day after Christmas, so I thought everything was set and ready to go. On Saturday, she calls me crying, saying that her wedding dress wouldn't arrive on time since she had some changes done. For some context, no one knows how this dress looks because she wanted to keep it a surprise for everyone, per her own words. I tried to comfort her and I told her I knew some cute boutiques who had some nice wedding dresses ready for her date. She cries harder, telling me that she didn't want any cheap dress. I try to calm her down once more before telling her I would call my stepdad to see what we could do. Before I could finish that sentence, she says out of the blue, "Can I wear your dress?" I didn't respond because I didn't know how to. She goes on explaining that it would make things less troubling, how she's the same size as me and how much she loved it the second she saw it on me. I don't know what possessed me to simply say no and hang up the phone. I've received multiple calls from her fiance, and my stepdad, who I did respond to. He pleaded to me to let her borrow my wedding dress, just like when we were kids. I tried to explain to him that my wedding dress was very special to me, and I wouldn't feel comfortable letting anyone else in it unless it was my decision. He got super angry with me and hung up. My messages have been exploding with my stepsister, her soon-to-be husband, and my stepdad telling me how horrible I am for being so selfish. I know how my stepsister is. I know how dramatic and over the top she can be when she doesn't get her way, but there's a part of me that feels awful for not letting her wear it since it's just a dress and it would make her so happy. But there's that other part of me that remembers how my husband, my mom, and I struggled to save for it because it was my dream dress, and I don't want to share something so personal with her. Should I just let her have it so things don't escalate? Update, I'll go see her now. I'll update when I get home. Update 2, well, that happened. I arrived at said coffee shop just in time. She just took half an hour to get there. I talked as gently as I could with her, explaining how I didn't want her to wear my wedding dress and why, since it was so emotionally attached to me. She went absolutely nuts. She called me a selfish cow, telling me how I'm the most horrible human ever. I tried to calm things down until I just couldn't do it anymore. I knew this was a possibility, so as soon as she started crying, I pulled out her wedding invitation and gave it back to her. I told her I wouldn't be attending the wedding, but I hoped it all went perfectly. Her voice couldn't get louder at this point. She threatened to come to my house and take it from me. I simply left the coffee shop without saying another word, and now I'm home. Well, considering how the interaction went, I think OP knows that they're safely not the jerk, and maybe it's even time to consider something like restraining order. I mean, she seems weirdly obsessed and pretty unhinged there. Other representative 2 commented, "Not the jerk, I'm calling shenanigans on your stepsister's part. She probably just had her eye on your dress since day one, probably commissioned a similar dress, if she even did, hence the surprise, and planned to use your dress as a backup if hers didn't show up in time." But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another absolutely crazy Am I the Jerk Here story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.